Number 10. Ava Ayala. From her introduction in the comics, Ava Ayala was pretty much always involved with the Avengers. She possesses the White Tiger amulet, which grants her powers. She enrolled in the Avengers Academy and was later declared an official Avengers member during her time with Luke Cage's Mighty Avengers in Volume 2 of the series named after the team, during the Infinity Event. Fun fact, if you exclude Doc Ock's Superior Spider-Man, the Mighty Avengers would be considered to be an all-black superhero team. I think that's pretty cool. Number 9. Samuel Guthrie. Young Samuel Guthrie is also known as Nova, though he isn't the first one to take up that mantle. There have actually been many Novas, as Nova is short for Nova Centurion, and Centurion is a rank in the Nova Corps, which is a Xandarian military group who are mostly used in space exploration missions. Sam was the son of Jesse Alexander, who himself was a Nova Centurion. Sam ended up taking up his father's mantle after his father appeared to go missing. Sam would later end up crash landing on Earth and warning the Avengers of the incoming Phoenix Force during the Avengers vs. X-Men event. Siding with Avengers and doing his best to help them in their fight would grant Sam the opportunity to join the team. In Avengers vs. X-Men Volume 1 Issue 12, Thor offered him a membership to the team. While Nova admitted he felt he didn't do much to help, he was honored and accepted, pending his mother's approval of course. Cause you know, Nova's a youngster. He's gotta ask mom. Number 8. Blue Marvel. For those who aren't familiar with Adam Brashear, he is a brilliant engineer and physicist who ended up getting superpowers similar to Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel. He can absorb energy as well, but not quite in the same way. He can only absorb antimatter energy or energy from the negative zone, basically energy not of our world or universe. So he typically does a lot of space fighting as a result, cause it's kinda where he's the most useful. He's also sometimes known for his romantic relationship with Spectrum, aka Monica Rambeau. He wasn't acknowledged as an official member of the Avengers until the self-titled Mighty Avengers series Volume 2 out of 2012. Luke Cage, the team leader, acknowledged him as an Avenger during the Infinity event when he was helping the team. Though we would later find out that Adam had actually been part of a team predating Luke's from the 1970s, also referred to as the Mighty Avengers. But this wouldn't happen till issue 11 of the series, whereas he was welcomed to the team officially in issue 3, in regards to comic book timeline. So it was in the past, but it also happened after. You know, just normal retcons of sprinkling in more flavor. Number 7. Jane Foster. After Thor found he could no longer lift his hammer, Jane began to hear the call from Mjolnir. She had Heimdall take her to it and claim the hammer for herself. She was deemed worthy enough to pick it up and became Thor. Lady Thor, that is. Despite being diagnosed with cancer and finding out that her transformation into Thor wiped away all the progress of her chemo at the time, Jane continued to perform acts of heroism as Thor. Cause she's cool and brave like that. She has joined the Avengers team in a few instances, one being when she joined the Reformed team in the all-new, all-different Avengers series. Number 6. Miles Morales. Miles Morales is the Spider-Man of Earth 1610. He was mentored by Peter Parker of Earth 616 and eventually also ended up joining Earth 616 Avengers as well. He joined the team in the all-new, all-different Avengers series. Miles found himself tangled up with Iron Man and Sam Wilson, who was Captain America at the time, and a ragtag crew of heroes in an attempt to take down the Chitauri warlord known as Warbringer. The team wasn't referring to themselves as the Avengers yet, but of course, as the series is named, that they would later be referred to as the Avengers. You're Avengers now, whether you like it or not. Number 5. Kamala Khan. I was just going to straight up title her as Miss Marvel cause I mean that's who she is to me now, but Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel was part of the Avengers way before what I would consider new, and I didn't want to cause any unnecessary confusion, so much respect to Kamala as Miss Marvel, but for clarity we're just going to call her by her civilian name here, Kamala Khan. I really love Kamala Khan as an Avenger as well. Kamala also joined up with the Avengers in the all-new, all-different Avengers series, also appearing in issue 1, where we saw Miles and Nova as well. The three heroes would actually later leave the Avengers to start their own superhero team known as the Champions. After helping to take down Warbringer, Stark would offer Kamala a place on the Avengers team, which of course she happily accepted. Number 4. Nadia Van Dyne. Nadia Van Dyne was originally just Nadia. She was the daughter of Hank Pym and his first wife, Maria Travoia. How did she end up with Janet Van Dyne's last name? Well, she asked her if she could use it. She felt she knew and admired Van Dyne more than her parents, whom she really had never known. In fact, Nadia was actually kidnapped at a young age and raised in Russia in the Red Room, where she was trained to become a spy, which is why we hadn't heard of her until much later. She eventually escaped her fate as a Red Room agent and decided to seek out her stepmother Janet and her father's teammates, the Avengers, after learning that her father had been killed in the fight against Ultron. Nadia also took up the codename Wasp. Following the events of Civil War II, she ended up joining the Avenger team herself. Janet and the rest of the team ended up warming to her, and Janet revealed that she actually approved of Nadia adopting her mantle. Aw, cute. Number 3. Dr. Tony Ho. After her father father died saving Tony Stark's life, Tony resented Stark and strived to be better than him. I just realized this will be confusing because both of these people are named Tony. She studied programming and engineering at Caltech and ended up earning 3 doctorates by the age of 20. Her time with the Avengers began on Roberto da Costa, aka Sunspot's team of Avengers, AIM. Da Costa changed the acronym to stand for Avengers Idea Mechanics. She has appeared in the New Avengers comics and eventually left AIM to join the US Avengers and ended up taking up the mantle of Iron Patriot. Tony creates her own armored combat suits similar to Iron Man's, which she refers to as rescue armor. She refers to them as rescue armor probably because they're all non-lethal as well. That's kind of her thing. It's all about non-lethal fighting, keeping things safe. Number 2. Ghost Rider. Robbie Reyes is the Ghost Rider we are talking about this time. He was first introduced in the all-new Ghost Rider and is a car mechanic by day who street races at night in an effort to get money to help him and his brother move out of their rough neighborhood. He ends up possessed by the vengeful spirit of his uncle Eli and becomes Ghost Rider. Eventually Robbie joins up with the Avengers. You can see him fight alongside the team in the New Avengers comic series out of 2018 to 2019 Volume 8. At one point he even becomes the heart of an event where he is granted the powers of the other Avengers so that he can eventually go up against and hopefully take on what appears to be the Dark Celestials. Appears to be anyways. I know. What a story, right? He's also just a really sweet older brother. Also, cars. Number 1. Voyager. Vini Gost is the daughter of Grandmaster Endwi Gost. She originally used her powers to infiltrate the Avengers, inserting herself into their memories to make them believe she was a long-lost founding member of the team known as Valerie Vector. Voyager did that for her dad, Endwi Gost, to help him protect his title of Grandmaster, basically to help guarantee a winning wager on a contest he had gambled his title on with her uncle Challenger, who sought to win the bet and usurp her father. He used to be the Grandmaster before. Anyways, it's a lot of history, so we'll skip that. In the end, her true identity was revealed by Jarvis. After being inspired by the Avengers' true heroics, she decided to switch sides, defecting and seeking to help them and Earth instead. In the end, they offered Voyager a membership. Though she declined, she did agree to return to reclaim her membership at a later time. And in the series Avengers No Road Home, she is acknowledged as an Avenger on the character intro page.
Number 10. Miles Morales. Now in the comments, plenty of you were aghast at the fact that Ultimate Universe darling Miles Morales wasn't on part 1. But the thing is, for many people, Miles feels like he's been around forever, since he was so accepted in the universe. He quickly spread to many stories within it, and then eventually beyond it, and is now a staple of the 616 universe as well. But Miles Morales is very recent in comic terms. He first debuted in Ultimate Fallout number 4 in 2011, which actually makes him less than a decade old at the time of this recording. But his compelling backstory and respectful ascendance to mantle of Spider-Man quickly made him a fan favorite. And he has surged into the popular consciousness with outings such as Into the Spider-Verse. Miles is just such a fleshed out, genuine character with a love for his mantle, and many find that infectious. He is representative, but in a very organic way that makes him relatable to all, but especially to an at times underrepresented group, which of course is always nice. Stories for all. Number 9. Teen Lantern. Teen Lantern is Kelly Quintella, who first appeared in Young Justice Volume 3 number 1 in 2019. This is continuing the trend of Earth having way too many Green Lanterns. Now the Teen Lantern is a precocious character who has a very mild may vary impact as a result. She is a super genius who sees an alien get attacked at a junkyard while she is there looking for scraps for her inventions. She goes back and talks to the alien, a la Hal Jordan, and she gets a device that allows her to hack into the Owen Central Power Battery, the Green Lantern Power Battery, which she uses to get her own Green Lantern ring. She then sets off to Metropolis to become a hero, the Teen Lantern. She would end up becoming a member of Young Justice. Now some love this, they're like the ultimate fantasy and so empowering. And others are like lazy and fanficky and too many lanterns. She only came out in 2019, so we shall see how the Teen Lantern fares, especially with DC threatening reboots on the horizon. Number 8. Silk. Silk emerged out of the original Sin story arc, which featured secrets never before known to the Marvel Universe coming to light. She first appeared as a cameo in The Amazing Spider-Man number 1 in 2014, and she made her full appearance in issue 4. So the story? She was bitten by the same radioactive spider that bit Peter, but only a few minutes later, and then she was hidden away in a bunker for years, which is why no one had ever heard of her or seen her. Also, her and Peter have pheromones that combine so that they can't keep their hands off of each other, literally. Silk proved decently popular and got her own solo series and has stuck around on teams and events since. Number 7. Riri Williams. Riri Williams is Ironheart, and she had a cameo appearance in Invincible Iron Man number 7 back in 2016, and then made her debut in issue 9. So Riri built her own Iron Man suit, using materials stolen from her campus. She would prove polarizing, largely because of the state of comics at the time she was introduced, and some very aggressive, abrasive writing at the start of her run that would regularly see her insulting her compatriots and threatening foes and civilians alike. However, some were convinced any who did not like her must be racist, as she wasn't aggressive in their eyes, but assertive and different and interesting. This created a cloud of controversy around the character that some simply wanted to shy away from. Some new writers later, Riri has become much more fleshed out and relatable, and we've even gotten more interpersonal interactions with her teammates. Riri hasn't appeared quite as much of late, but Marvel is pushing its legacy characters, so it's likely she shall resurface very soon. Number 6, the Shazam family. Now you may be saying, Shazam has a family, what are you talking about? Yes, Billy and Mary were always there, but the extended family of foster kids who so delighted fans in the Shazam movie are a recent addition. These characters were introduced in the Flashpoint miniseries, which led into the New 52 all the way back in 2011 through 2012. This was the start of a temporarily more edgy personality for Billy, and a whole new cast of superpowered cronies. The Shazam family would prove endearing to fans who loved the idea of these kids making it on their own, and it made it feel a bit like a club. And of course, more kids in adult or teen bodies led to some pretty fun shenanigans. Number 5, Simon Baz. Simon Baz is yet another Green Lantern who was also created as a result of the New 52, which, while maligned, did have some solid characters come out of it. He first appeared in the New 52 Free Comic Book Day Special Edition number 1 back in 2012. Baz was notable not just for having the same name as a Rainbow Rowell character, but for being Muslim American, which featured largely in his plot. His creation was pointed, but at the same time he had depth and flaws and embraced being a hero and his newfound ability to heal. He would struggle with things like relying on his ring and other heroes. For example, he carried a gun for a while at the start of his tenure as the Green Lantern, which put him in direct conflict with Batman for obvious reasons. And his wrongful terrorist conviction would make some wary of him at first. But Baz was also a man who cared about his family and community, and a character that has managed to stand out in a sea of lanterns. More love for Simon Baz. Number 4, Viv Vision. Vivian Vision, aka Viv, is the daughter of Vision and his robot wife, first introduced in Tom King's excellent maxi series The Visions. She debuted in 2016. This series would deal with sentience and the question of what it meant to be aware. Viv would prove to be the character who spun off from that series and would join the team The Champions. This was an entire team of younger heroes. She would also develop romantic feelings for Ironheart, and the two would end up sharing a kiss. Viv, however, is one of those cases where not all writers are sure what to do with her. This is how she ended up being rendered human by the High Evolutionary for a bit, and then ended up having her consciousness transplanted back into another Viv robot body. She's a character who, all things being equal, would potentially go the way of Jade, but we shall see what the future holds. Number 3, Calderon, the Aqualad introduced in Young Justice the animated series. This character took the world by storm. Calder is an excellent example of an introduction of a character. He was woven into the backstory without erasing Garth, the first Aqualad, or making him less important. And he was presented with his own insecurities, and as the core of the team, a natural leader and calming presence. He quickly became a favorite amongst many fans. This series in general would be praised for its mature tone, and Calder would have a compelling connection to a classic villain. A connection that actually played off pretty well and not kitschy. Calder would later also be used for genderqueer representation in Season 3. Mileage varies on Season 3 in general, but that is normal for a series that has a long hiatus. The writing is rarely ever exactly the same. Number 2, Jessica Cruz. More Green Lanterns everywhere. She appeared near the end of the New 52 with her first full appearance in Justice League number 31. She had had 2 cameo appearances prior to that. She was a woman who had a ring forced upon her essentially, and has many demons to overcome. She was not what some would consider the most likely candidate for a ring, because she suffers from crippling anxiety and agoraphobia. This was triggered by witnessing the death of her friends at the hands of mobsters. She struggles with feelings of a lack of self-worth, and as such it took her a while to hit her stride, both with the ring and her partner Simon Baz. But the two would become fast friends, and she would eventually master her ring. Jessica would come into her own, finding her anxieties more manageable, most of the time. She is definitely unique and a good addition to the core. More Jessica, just less of her kissing Bruce randomly.
Starting off at number 10, we have Forget-Me-Not. I wanted to start this list off really small, with a character y'all may not know. Mainly because almost no one knows him because that's his power. Appearing in 2014, Forget-Me-Not had actually been a member of the X-Men for several years before this, but thanks to his abilities, no one can remember him. Forget-Me-Not's abilities make it so that he is imperceptible in all forms. basically. The power is so good that even Charles Xavier himself had to place a psychic reminder on himself so that he would remember Forget-Me-Not's existence. Clearly that means some of the most powerful telepaths have difficulty discovering him, let alone remembering him. His power is to be forgotten, but the unique ways this power could be used, and the uniqueness of this power in general, will keep him in my mind. Number 9, we got I-Boy. Why is a guy named I-Boy on a list of strongest members of the X-Men? I see you, like many of the other mutants, are very judgmental. Trevor Hawkins' body is covered in eyes, 57 to be exact, which give him an array of powers that honestly, you kinda may expect. Microscopic, telescopic, X-ray, night, infrared, and thermal vision are all a part of his power list. But he can also detect chemicals, is an excellent marksman, and is skilled in nonverbal communication. He can almost read other people's minds by reading their behaviors and body language. He is an incredible tracker. He can predict attacks and can read people's histories just by looking at them. He can pinpoint weak spots in machines and people, is able to see electronic wavelengths and microwaves, is able to see past illusions and disguises as well as magic waves. He makes an amazing detective, in short. On top of all that, he can even pass what he sees onto others, but he has to be physically close enough for it to work. But to top it all off, the craziest and most unexpected power he possesses recently is solar blasts. We don't know how just yet, but Trevor can emit intense bursts of bright yellow energy and focused beams of extrastellar force that cause sunburns and radiation poisoning. Coming in at number 8, it's GWENPOOL. I think GWENPOOL has one of the strangest powers. That would be the power of medium interaction, which is because she comes from a reality very much like ours, as in superheroes are fictional people in comic books. So, when Gwen was transported to a pocket universe that recreated her home reality, Gwen's perception of the fictional world allowed her to gain the ability to recognize and manipulate the artistic medium that she was now in. She can see and physically interact with lettering and caption boxes, and touch and even break through panel gutters, allowing her to transport objects short distances through space and time by moving them across panels, and she interacts with different instances of herself from multiple panels on the same page. Now I don't know if you've realized this, but this kind of means Gwendolyn Poole can kind of warp reality in a way. She kind of becomes one of the most crazily powerful characters in comics, at least potentially. She first showed up in Howard the Duck Volume 6 number 1 in November of 2015, and she has actually teamed up with many different characters and teams, including being a member of the X-Men on and off again.
And it's 7 STRIX. Silly rabbit, STRIX are for kids! I'm not sorry about that one. The Court of Owls storyline that launched Batman into the New 52 is held in high esteem. And directly through these comics came Mary Turner, aka STRIX, a former Talon/Immortal assassin for the Court of Owls. And she's gone severely underrated. As a child, she was horribly disfigured by a bomb attached to a balloon. That's like if Pennywise was a criminal with no powers, like what the actual hell? During her time as an assassin, she faced Batgirl, ultimately letting her go even though she had won, because they both wore masks. She rarely appears outside of her creator's books, but every time she shows up she's a delight to read. She reformed in an effort to atone for her past, and has been included in the Birds of Prey and Secret Six. While hardly anyone knows her, I know I didn't until I was researching this list, but she is still a wonderful character that deserves to be taken out of limbo and shown more in larger storylines.
Number 6! It's SYNCH. Everett Thomas isn't a new character by any means, being first introduced in 1994, but while he was a part of Generation X, he didn't officially land on the team until this newest iteration of X-Men. He was also one of the first mutants resurrected by the Five on Krakoa, due to the fact that his powers could enable him to act as a substitute for any of the Five who might need to tag out. With that said, what are his powers? SYNCH's powers are known as synchronistic power replication. SYNCH basically produces this really cool funkadelic looking aura that allows him to synchronize with other supers in his vicinity, letting him use their powers unless they leave the vicinity. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't need that person to be completely there. So if you had like a tissue sample from a superpowered person, he could sync with that and it would be enough. Since his resurrection, his powers have been amped up, giving him a limited memory bank of powers he's synced with. He became an official base member of the new X-Men team announced at the Hellfire Gala alongside Laura Kinney in X-Men Volume 5 number 21 in 2022.
Number 5. Apolitical Politics. Art Spiegelman is known as one of the most acclaimed comic writers. He even won a Pulitzer Prize for his graphic novel Mouse. When asked to write an introductory essay for a collection of Marvel works, a phrase referring to Donald Trump as an orange skull was highlighted by the editing team, who said that due to Marvel's editorial policy, it would have to be omitted in order for the introductory essay to make it to print in regards to the collection. Spiegelman was slightly surprised and ended up rescinding his essay as a result. This news led to much backlash from both the Marvel and general comic book fan community alike, who criticized Marvel for making political statements only when it was safe or could be used to make them more money, and hiding behind an apolitical policy when they were too afraid to make statements. Let's not forget that Marvel themselves created a villainous version of Trump in 2016's SPIDER-GWEN annual, known as MODAK, and yet they can't have that phrase in an essay. I mean, what are you doing, Marvel? Which one are we doing here?
Number 4, it's Dupe. First appearing in X-Force number 116 in 2001, Dupe's origin story is kind of hard to explain, because we don't know for a fact what it is. Captain America tells us he was a US Cold War weapons project, and he apparently had some kind of role in the fall of communism. He was originally a member of X-Force until eventually becoming a member of X-Static. For such an unthreatening character, Dupe is surprisingly strong. He has been described as being an extra-dimensional being with a genius-level intellect, bordering on possible omniscience. And he has a large array of psionic powers, one of which includes controlling Russians. He can change his size and shape at will, allowing him to heal wounds and reassemble parts of his body if they have been removed or cut off. He has an incredible level of super strength and durability as well, with an unknown limit, being able to match and overcome Thor in a fight when he was in a weakened state, taking hits from Mjolnir while he did so. He seems to be able to come back from the afterlife, and he also has a pocket dimension inside himself that he can store things in and summon creatures from. He can also completely break the fourth wall and go across the comic panels. Dupe has defeated the devil all by himself. He is overpowered, and I don't know how anyone loses with him on their team.
Getting close to the end at number 3, Bluebird. Originally, it seemed like Bluebird was just going to be a female Nightwing, but she has grown to be much more than a superhero substitute. She is a mix of plenty of members of the Bat family, and makes a pretty big splash when she's thrown into a situation. Harper Row is a young girl living in Gotham's Narrows with her brother Cullen. Seems like a bit of a vampire. They fled from their abusive father and got emancipated, but after randomly meeting Batman, she was determined on joining his team to help him. Her relationship with the Bat is slightly antagonistic but still respectful, which is something else in the DC universe. Batman has mentored many children over the years, and somehow they keep joining even though they'll probably die. But none of the heroes' other compatriots have really had this kind of relationship, so she fills a role that nobody else has really been able to. It's nice, fresh, and she has a dope costume. It's very similar to that of Nightwing combined with Red Hood. It's honestly dope, realistic to our world rather than the DC universe. But I just don't know how she turns her neck.
Number 2, ELIXIR. Joshua Foley, otherwise known as ELIXIR, is a mutant with Omega level healing abilities. He's incredibly powerful, and while originally was just considered a general threat, he can actually use his powers offensively as well, completely ending lives if he wants to. Using his mutant ability of biokinesis, ELIXIR is capable of controlling the biological structure of his own and other people's bodies down to the genetic level. Now this started off small, but has grown to allow him to simultaneously heal dozens of people, resurrect himself and others, and even the ability to control, manipulate, and absorb the life forces of other living creatures. Offensively, he can use his death touch to harm others, to cause different types of illness, massive swellings, and organ failure. He's even completely destroyed the body of enemies before. He is one of the core members of the Five, as I'm sure no one is surprised about, and he has been a member of the X-Men ever since he was one of the only surviving mutants who retained his powers at the Xavier Institute after M-Day, and he was trained to become one in 2006's New Mutants. Number 1! Hope Summers. Hope Summers was the first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the mutant decimation, or the day that Scarlet Witch cast No More Mutants. She was then taken into the far future and raised by Cable, being carried around in the coolest baby Bjorn you'll ever see. Not too long after, she returned to the present and her mutant powers finally activated. Her power is basically that of Omega level power manipulation. She can manipulate the powers of other mutants nearby to her, even mimicking their powers, but at full capacity and with complete control over those powers. And she can even take on multiple powers at once, but it is pretty tiring for her to do that. A large part of her role in the Krakoan society is as the leader of the Five, who use their abilities to resurrect the mutants of Krakoa. Her role on the Five specifically is both to boost their powers to their full potential and help them work in synergy with each other perfectly. She also helped terraform Mars alongside Vulcan and Proteus, giving them enough power to actually do it. She is such a cool character, and she first appeared back in X-Men Volume 2 number 205 in 2008, but was a child for much of that until she came of age and joined X-Force and the X-Men.
Number 10. MAR-VELL. When Captain Marvel came out, there was a lot of backlash surrounding the film for many reasons, but I'm not here to talk about the SJW stuff. I am here to talk about some changes made to one specific character, MAR-VELL. In the story, the character of MAR-VELL was gender swapped and played by Annette Bening, who I personally thought did a great job as the Kree scientist slash superhero. But why did we gender swap the role? I'm a big fan of gender swaps when they are done well and they mean something, but many people were left to ask why this has been swapped. It didn't seem to inform any relevant changes to the character. Was it because they simply preferred Bening for that role? Or was it to convey an air of mystery in regards to who MAR-VELL was in the story? And if it's the latter, making a great change to the character's alias should have also then happened. As much as I like the idea of the change being plot driven, they then made her alias Wendy Lawson, an obvious parallel for comic fans to the comic book MAR-VELL's Walter Lawson. So yeah, this gender swap didn't really feel relevant and as such left people asking unsatisfied, but why though? Number 9. Strange Academy. Strange Academy's first issue was just recently released early March 2020, but when the comic was first announced, it was met with lots of mixed feelings from Marvel fans, and fans of another popular franchise. See if you can guess which one. The idea around Strange Academy was to spin a yarn about a school of uniquely magically gifted youngsters who join an academy in New Orleans to hone their powers. Sounding familiar yet? Many took to Twitter to share their outrage for what was deemed a potential ripoff of many other magically based series and fandoms involving academies. Yep, one of them being, you guessed it, the magical world of Harry Potter. Of course, the first issue is out now, so this is one people can now read up on and decide for themselves if this backlash was warranted or not. Number 8. First openly gay character. In the MCU, that is. When it was rumored that the first openly gay character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe would finally appear after more than 20 films, people were of course excited and eager to find out who the character was and to learn more about them and their story. All the excitement unfortunately only led to disappointment and outrage from fans when we found out that the character, played by Joe Russo himself, was only in 10 seconds of the 3-hour film. 10 seconds, that's all we got. The character was simply an unnamed civilian who is part of a support group led by Steve Rogers himself, seeking to help those who lost loved ones during the snap. What do we discover about him? Well, we discovered that he simply lost his partner and is trying to get back into dating again. He had no importance in regards to the main narrative, and while the filmmakers had good intentions when it came to including an openly gay character, his lack of substance or importance made people feel like Marvel was merely pandering. People had been looking for more meaningful representation, though Kevin Feige and the Marvel and Disney team responded to the backlash, assuring fans that more genuine overall diversity in the world of supers could be expected in the next phase.
Number 7. Laura Kinney. I know, she isn't really new as a character, but Laura Kinney, or X-23, has become the all-new Wolverine, and that is relatively new. She officially joined the X-Men as this Wolverine at the Hellfire Gala in 2021. There are a few characters with powers similar to Wolverine, and there are even a few who are clones of Laura herself. But of all these characters, Laura is certainly the best and definitely the most fan-loved. Her powers are very similar to Logan's, with her primary mutant power being an accelerated healing factor. And obviously she also has retractable bone claws, only she has 2 in her forearms and 1 in her foot. Well, each foot. She was obviously a clone and grew up being made to be a weapon, so of course she has an extremely haunted past. But with Logan as a father figure in her life, she grew up under him, and she even did the same for Gabrielle Kinney, another clone who Laura considers to be her younger sister. She's already done so much, but I just kinda can't wait to see what else she does as Wolverine.
And in at number 1, Amulet. Amulet gets to be number 1 because he's the newest at the time of this recording. He's a character that is so new, he hasn't even debuted yet. He's set to debut in March of 2020, so he's only been shown as concept art and in solicitations. He'll be joining Miss Marvel's book, and he is an Arab-born American from Dearborn, Michigan. I'm not highlighting that, Marvel is. It's the first thing they point out, along with a description about how his costume doesn't have pointy edges because pointy edges make people think about villainy. He is said to be a gentle giant, and it's also said that most of the details of his past are being kept as a surprise. So welcome Amulet to the Marvel Universe. Hopefully he'll be awesome, because that's what I hope for from all new characters, for new exciting stories.
Starting us off in at number 10, White Eagle. White Eagle is a Polish superhero created in 2011, a man by the name of Alex Poniatowski. Rich, handsome, and smart, Alex was the president of the country's largest corporation, Tech Corp, and had a prospering family to boot. Then he fell out of his corporation's office building, and fell into a coma for 3 years, having no memory of the accident when he awoke. Escaping the clutches of death, he takes a special serum meant to cure him of his paralysis, which then gives him superpowers. Moving on to number 9, Captain China from 2012. Captain China is a superhero published by the Chinese publisher Excel Comics, a digital webcomic that stars a fellow who became a hero after he awoke from 50 years of cryogenic sleep. He is a long dormant champion brought out of cryogenic sleep to be a symbol and protector for his homeland. It's also worth noting that he's often referred to as the world's greatest communist superhero, so take what you will from that. Captain China was the result of a campaign called Great Leap Forward, in which the Chinese government strove to create superhuman soldiers, but thanks to that project, near-fatal side effects ensued, causing the government to have to place him in cryogenic storage in order to prevent his death. At the dawn of a new age of China, a solution was found, and he was brought out of sleep, although he awoke in a very different world than the one that he remembered. Moving on to number 8, All Might from 2014. All Might is from My Hero Academia, and is considered to be the world's #1 hero, or at least that world's #1 hero. He's positive, fun, and full of energy, and he fits into the quintessential superhero mold. All Might is self-sacrificing and understands and fights for justice because he genuinely wants to, not because of some past angsty trauma that spawned him to. I don't want to say angsty actually, not because of some past trauma that spawned him to. Despite being a little corny, it is easy to see why All Might is so lovable beyond just being a strong superhero. Plus, he is basically a father figure for the protagonist in My Hero Academia, which speaks volumes. Moving on to number 7, Kamala Khan. Kamala Khan is Miss Marvel, who was introduced in 2014, and arguably is one of the best new superheroes of the decade. Debuting in Captain Marvel issue 14 in 2013, she would go on to star in her own solo series in 2014, which would win the Hugo Award for Best Graphic Story in 2015. Now, compared to her namesake, this Miss Marvel got her powers in a very different way. She is a Pakistani American from Jersey City who gained shape-shifting abilities after the Inhumanity storyline in the Marvel Universe caused her latent abilities to awaken. Her story was one of empathy, identity, and finding power within yourself. This resonated hard with audiences and made Kamala become a mainstream superhero name much faster than anyone expected. Plus, she's so damn endearing. It's hard not to like her. She's even getting her own show on Disney+, so that's pretty dope. Moving on to number 6, Spider-Gwen. Spider-Gwen is another character who found popularity fast. She first appeared in Edge of Spider-Verse issue 2 in 2014 as a variant of Spider-Man from the alternate universe of Earth 65. In her story, she's Gwen Stacy, bitten by a radioactive spider and becoming a superhero instead of Peter Parker. Many aspects of her personality mimic Peter's though, along with his ideologies and internal conflicts. After being hailed for her costume design and becoming a majorly cosplayed character, she was later expanded upon in the Marvel Universe, finding herself in her own ongoing series, even getting romantically tangled up with the 1610 Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, she lives on Earth 616, operating under the mantle of Ghost Spider. Up next, number 5, Jonathan Kent. Jonathan Samuel Kent, who first appeared in 2015, or rather just John Kent, is Superboy, the Man of Steel's latest iteration of a son. There's a whole lot of continuity to go through in order to explain how exactly John Kent came to be, so let's just kinda skip over that for now. Just know that he's half Kryptonian, his mother's Lois Lane, and he's been in the main continuity long enough to warrant that he's here for good. And best thing yet, he has become best buds with Batman's son Damian Wayne, the current Robin. Their dynamic has made for some of the best lighter moments in recent years in DC's panels. Up next, number 4, Gwenpool. Gwenpool first appeared in Deadpool's Secret Wars issue 2 in 2015 as
as an amalgam of Gwen Stacy and Deadpool on a variant cover of the comic. Now that spawned a huge fan following, which then led to her fully appearing in Marvel's panels in Howard the Duck issue 1 a few months later. Now fun fact, Gwenpool has literally no association to Deadpool, minus that publication history we just mentioned, and the fact that in her own storyline, when she got her suit tailored, the tailor just believed that she was, trying to be like Deadpool. It's because he misread her name. Her full name is Gwendolyn Poole, spelled P-O-O-L-E. Now she claims to have entered the Marvel Universe from the real world, and unwilling to be an extra in this world, she became a superhero. She doesn't really have any superpowers beyond her self-reflexivity, although her baseline abilities when it comes to using extreme weaponry and being a brilliant tactician are not to be forgotten. She is clearly capable of interdimensional travel though, and has a vast knowledge of the Marvel Universe, coming from a world in which she saw the events of the Marvel Universe play out in comic books. Up next, number 3, we have NAOMI. NAOMI is a DC character who debuted in 2019 under the creative team of Brian Michael Bendis, David Walker, and Jamal Campbell. NAOMI McDuffie is a character capable of energy manipulation, energy enhanced strikes, flight. She's invulnerable, is capable of light projection, and has super strength. She is the sole survivor of an alternate world, one that had endured a crisis in which Earth's natural protective layer collapsed due to environmental neglect. Now the world is bathed in radiation. In the aftermath of this, 29 individuals gained godlike powers due to the crisis, and you bet your butt that NAOMI was one of them. Her Earth found itself in a constant conflict between these superpowered individuals, and a mass murder ended up conquering half the globe. In other words, it was not a fun place to be. So NAOMI was sent to Earth Zero as a baby, and was raised by both an alien and a human from Earth. She wouldn't find out the truth behind her past until she was an adolescent. Up next, number 2, Star aka Ripley Ryan. In July of 2019, we were introduced to a brand new superhero in Captain Marvel issue 8. She is Star, a character whose powers rival Carol Danvers. She flies, she has super strength, and has a costume that kinda looks like Carol's too. She appeared in the aftermath of the pretty bad fallout of Carol's, in which the hero's Kree heritage was revealed to the people of Earth, causing her military rank to be stripped. This all happened because of Minerva, a Kree scientist soldier who leaked this information after Carol pissed her off. Minerva also created Star, a Kree super soldier built from a mixture of Kree DNA and human DNA. She is powerful as hell, but not because Minerva succeeded in genetically mixing together that DNA. It's because she built tech to siphon Carol's powers to Star. That's why they're so similar. There's a lot that we don't know about Ripley yet, but now she's set to be the star of her own limited comic book series starting in January of 2020. And finally, in our number 1 spot, Green Lantern Joe Mullion. Recently, DC released a new title called Far Sector, in which a brand new member of the Green Lantern Corps was introduced to readers. This Green Lantern is Joe, a rookie protagonist who operates out in deep space. She is in a sector that is off the books. The series follows her investigating a murder in a location where a homicide hasn't occurred in over 5 centuries, taking place in a city devoid of emotion in order to prevent crimes. And Joe is really cool, might I add. Problem is, the other Green Lanterns don't even know she exists yet, which makes her story perhaps even more compelling, especially concerning that her mission and her identity itself is a secret. We're excited to see where this character goes in the future.
Number 6, Iceman comes out. Okay, so you know me, I'm all for having gay characters and supers in the Marvelverse. I'm even for retconning some characters' sexual orientations to provide a more diverse cast when it comes to some of our original super teams' makeup. Because they were all really straight at the beginning there, because it was the 50s and the 60s. But this retcon got a lot of backlash for a reason that I would say is pretty understandable. Not what was being done, but really more how it was done. A common complaint among Marvel fans when it comes to decisions and retcons that are made for our most beloved characters. The fact that a younger Bobby Drake and a younger Jean Grey from the past had to convince him of his sexuality was weird. Like, why did he have to realize that he'd been gay all along? Why couldn't this have just been a thing that he realized in the present by himself? It just felt very put upon as opposed to being natural and organic. Many people rediscover their sexual orientation and sexuality every day. It isn't like you have to always know from the beginning. It can be more fluid than that. And the way this was written in and then later kind of dropped again made the whole thing feel kind of forced, and like they were using it. Like I said, I like that they made this choice, but like many, I wish that they'd executed the moment of revelation with a bit more grace, and not by saying that if you aren't in love with Jean Grey, you must be gay. Not everyone has to be in love with Jean Grey, guys, okay? Just because you're an X-Men, you don't have to be in love with Jean Grey. Stop it. It's weird.
Halfway through at number 5, DEFACER. One of Nightwing's love interests is a reformed criminal. DEFACER was once a sidekick to Pigeon, a small-time criminal who Batman and Robin caught and arrested along with DEFACER. After she was caught, Shawn Sang was sent to restart her life. After being released, she relocated to Bloodhaven and joined the former villain support group known as the Runoffs. Probably set up by Batman in all honesty, just like the superhero support group. She lived happy in recovery even though she never trusted any superheroes. Then Nightwing showed up and Shawn got arrested on suspected murder. She asked Nightwing if he could help clear her name. After he did, they started dating for a time. She even suited up to help her boyfriend on the occasional criminal takedown. Unfortunately, they didn't last forever. She even got kidnapped by Deathwing. But she was still a cool character, and despite the odd name and backstory, was important to a character we all love. So she should be important to us too, right?
Number 4, Hail Hydra. As much as there was a lot to love about this event, there was also a lot that people were left hating. Captain America ended up being revealed as a longtime Hydra sleeper agent, which was amazing considering how many times he'd publicly fought against Nazis and Hydra, only to be revealed as one of them. This is a big part of Cap's character. Of course, this mentality and plot wouldn't stay permanent. I mean, could you believe if it had? Nope, it was all a dream. Well, not quite a dream, but more an altered reality that happened as a result of some tampering with the Cosmic Cube. However, because it was so against Cap's character, this change created a lot of uproar in the comic community, with people either loving or hating this whole adventure regarding Cap and everyone else that was involved. I think the other thing a lot of people were upset about was the fact that this story felt like it was simply made for shock value, made to shock people into buying comics, because how could Cap be a Hydra agent? What's going on? You just had to find out, which honestly made the whole controversy just a little bit worse. Shock value for comics, I get it, you gotta sell comics, but also, really? Like, that's very shocking for people that are huge fans of Captain America.
Coming in at number 3, it's Tempus. Eva Bell first was seen in all new X-Men #1 in 2012 when we also saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with friends and a boy when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with that boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and then took her in. She's been referred to as near Omega level with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can also speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which is why she is a member of the Five to age up whoever is being resurrected. And she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over this power from time to time, there is no doubt she is and can become more incredibly powerful.
Number 2, Avengers vs. Martin Scorsese. This backlash from Marvel fans was not directed at Marvel itself, but instead at Martin Scorsese, who remarked that MCU films were more about entertainment than the art of cinema. Fans not only revolted against the famed director, but also revolted against those who sided with him, which oddly enough included 2015's Fantastic Four film director and writer Josh Trank. Although he deleted the tweet after, he originally posted on Twitter his opinion of a genre of films that he actually was oddly enough a part of, despite the fact that FF was not really part of the MCU, saying, "Watching The Irishman, the first 5 minutes have more humanity and truth and cinematic intrigue than the running length of every single Marvel movie combined. Ah, sorry, facts. P.S. not sorry." Wow, hashtag troll life. Number 1, Snowflake and the New Warriors. I mean, you knew we were going to talk about this, right? The New Warriors was always meant to be a team about radicalizing the world of heroes. They were meant to be edgy and relatable to the youth of today. But this version of the New Warriors takes that commitment a little too far, and while trying to make themselves more relatable, only seems to end up inevitably distancing the very people they want to attract. The backlash surrounding the New Warriors is not about what they're trying to do, but like with most things, the lack of tact they seem to be able to exhibit while reinventing this squad of supers. It's almost like the squad was made without anyone actually reaching out and conversing with the groups that they're meant to represent. Oh, wait. The most problematic of the new heroes appears to be Snowflake and Safe Space. Snowflake is the first Marvel superhero to be explicitly labeled as non-binary. Cool, but why are we calling them Snowflake? Add in the fact that Safe Space, another term that is often made fun of online and often thrown around in a condescending way in regards to the LGBTQ community, is the name of Snowflake's twin, and that the two are described as a binary pair. And you already have more cringe to add to an already pretty cringy problem. Especially when you look at how the two are often drawn together, how they hold one another. Anyone else getting some icky Maximov twincest vibes here? No, just me? Ooh.
In a 10 hazmat. One day while making out with her boyfriend, Jennifer Takada stops when he falls into a coma. It turns out powers she didn't know she had activated, releasing enough radiation to cause the coma. Unluckily for her, her powers activated during a time where Norman Osborn was the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. So they found her and took her in for rigorous testing against her will, in the efforts of making her stronger and to use her as a weapon. He locked her in a suit that caused her to constantly leak enough radiation that anyone who would come close to her would die. But after escaping and being brought into the Avengers Academy, she developed a friendship with Metal, which abruptly ended when he was murdered by Arcade. Recently, she's been able to get some degree of control over her abilities, which lets her work outside of the suit, but she's had a tough life as all superheroes have, and she currently works with Captain Marvel. In a 9 fast track, Mina Dewan was a Star Labs employee until a Speed Force storm struck her, turning her into a superhero. She was able to pick up on her abilities quickly, and was able to keep up with Barry Allen physically and mentally. She was an excellent partner for the Flash, and even helped to mentor the new Kid Flash. But she was in a tricky situation. It appeared like she had been killed by Godspeed. She had returned as an agent of the Black Hole, a villainous organization that is currently being explored in the CW show, so we may see her pop up in later episodes. But that will take a different route since in the comics Mina and Barry dated, so they won't really be able to include that as a story element in the show. Do you watch the show? And do you think that Fast Track will make an appearance? They haven't had a new speedster in a few seasons after all. Not including Earth 90 Barry, that was the original TV series. But with only half a season left, they'll have to fast track the story. I'm sorry. In at 8, Jane Foster. Jason Aaron's popular Thor run led to one of the biggest twists or shakeups or earthquakes, whatever you want to call it, in Thor history. Thor was briefly deemed unworthy of wielding Mjolnir, but in the wake of this moment, it fell to Jane Foster. She took on the mantle of Thor in stride as the 9 realms raged in war, but the reason that was given for her worthiness was something that would even make Odin himself cry. She was dying of cancer. Every time she transformed, it would reverse the effects of her chemotherapy. Being Thor was killing Jane, but that wouldn't stop her, hence why she was worthy. She understood that Earth needed protecting, and she as Thor could do that. She was such a popular character, in fact, that they are adapting her role onto the screen, with Natalie Portman returning as Jane in Thor Love and Thunder, where she will reportedly use a restored Mjolnir, since the MCU one broke.
Number 7. Quicksilver dies. Quicksilver is known for being one of the fastest, if not the fastest person in the Marvel Universe. His need for speed has saved the Marvel Universe more than once, and he's a popular and well-known character and stable among the superhero community. And yet, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he was reduced to death by bullet. Yep. A guy who in the world of Fox Marvel X-Men can apparently move fast enough to save the entire occupants of the X-Mansion, Fish included, from an explosion as it is in the midst of happening. Really? Really, Disney and Marvel? Really, you gonna do them like that?
Gabrielle Kinney is a young clone of X-23, which basically means she's a clone of a clone. There has got to be a term for that. There's actually the possibility of that now though. Typically when you create a clone in real life, they would have some form of abnormality. But scientists at the Riken Center for Developmental Biology in Japan managed to clone 24 generations of mice from a single one. They were even able to reproduce on their own. So there could be up to like 23 more clones of Wolverine. Oh god. There is a point to that however, because she is one of a group of 10 clones of X-23, Bellona, Zelda, X-23 Par being a few. She escaped Alchemax with these sisters and ended up getting adopted by X-23, who ended up becoming her mother figure. She possesses the typical Wolverine powers, but with bone claws rather than metal. She also has a pet Wolverine called Jonathan, which just makes her that much better and honestly the sweetest thing on this list. She was unfortunately missing in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men relaunch, and now she goes by Scout, but I think that Honey Badger is the cuter name, so I'm gonna keep calling her that for this list.
Number 5. Zorn. Question: what would you do if you and your twin brother developed the mutant ability of having your head become a star? Answer: I honestly don't know how you would still be alive to decide what to do in the first place. Shen Zorn and his twin brother Quan Yin Zorn both developed mutant powers that, in essence, were tiny stars that burned away and replaced their actual heads. They were both isolated, and they both wear super cool looking iron helmets with power dampeners to contain their power from doing too much damage. Shen is called Zorn with a Z, and his head is actually technically a black hole. And to keep things not confusing, Kuan Yin is also named Zorn, but with an X. Okay, so what the heck can they do with their powers? Well, both of these characters can produce gravitational electromagnetism, which could actually allow them to heal others and use telepathy, and also, really weirdly, somehow allowed them to sense when people died and speak using shaking gravitational particles. Zorn, the one with a Z, could suck people into his black hole and even turn his black hole back into a sun. They could also both obviously do a lot of damage, using the power of a star to burn, blind, and incinerate people. They both became members of the X-Men at different times. X-Zorn was the first in 2002, but he wasn't always good. And his brother, Z-Zorn, joined more than a few years later.
And at 4, Robbie Reyes. Robbie Reyes was a young mechanic working in California, and the neighborhood he lived in was plagued by gangs and corruption, which would make several things difficult to say the least. He wanted to move into a safer neighborhood to keep himself and his brothers safe, but to raise the money he entered a street race to win $50,000. But when he got in the lead, what he thought were police started following him. Eventually he drove to a dead end, so he got out to explain himself, but then the men shot him, killing him. They tried to burn the car as well as his body, but his car was possessed by a ghost, which then possessed him, turning him into a new Ghost Rider. He chased after his killers and managed to get some of them, but not all. And as a Ghost Rider, he wants to be more than a spirit of vengeance, and after joining the Avengers, he proves to be one of their most powerful allies, even holding his own against the likes of the Celestials. He even made an MCU debut in Season 4 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is canon to the MCU because of Phil Coulson, but also because if you watched the show you'd understand why the Avengers were after Loki's staff in Age of Ultron.
Number 3. Fake mutants. That moment when Marvel retconned the origins of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, declaring that they were no longer, nor had they ever truly been, mutants. Excuse me? In Uncanny Avengers Volume 2 Issue 4, it was confirmed that these two were not mutants, but had been disguised as mutants by the High Evolutionary, who had experimented on them, got bored, and disguised them as mutants, just for funsies. But this whole retcon really started during the Axis event. During Axis, Wanda basically found out through a magical blood test, as the results came flooding in, that Magneto was not her father. Although Quicksilver was confirmed as her biological brother, which, given everything that was implied between the two in the Ultimate Universe, and their intense love for one another even in the main continuity, would have actually been something that I think we'd prefer retconned out of existence. Please, tell us they aren't related. The retcon of Pietro and Wanda Maximoff not being related to Magneto or being considered mutants was something that made years of family drama and much of House of M feel irrelevant, which I think is why people kind of felt, betrayed by this.
And at 2, Finesse. Anything you can do, she can do better, she can do anything better than you. Since Jean Foucal's power is being able to perfectly mimic anything she sees, a power set very similar to Taskmaster, who she in fact suspects to be her real father. She was recruited into the Avengers Academy while training to be an Olympic athlete at the age of 14, and proved to be one of the most interesting characters, struggling with social situations but always demonstrating skill, since anything the best fighters could do, she could do after seeing it. She always prioritized knowledge over human interaction, thus making things awkward when interacting with others. Same, I totally relate. She also struggles to not cross lines, like when she blackmailed Quicksilver and betrayed X-23. She joined the Academy at the same time as HAZMAT from earlier on the list, but definitely was a more interesting character. She blackmailed Quicksilver using her guess that he was never replaced by a Skrull, and because of this, he taught her everything he learned as a part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Interesting, but at least she's smart enough to figure it out. She had graduated MIT before being recruited after all. And yes, at 14. Finally, taking our number 1 spot, Gotham Girl. Superpowers don't really have a place in Gotham City, but with Rebirth, Tom King thought that a pair of superheroes were needed in the shadow that is Gotham City. Everything the light touches is your kingdom. What's that shadowy bit? That's Gotham. The two siblings known as Gotham Girl and Gotham, how creative, have similar abilities to Superman, and were the starring attractions of the early Batman Rebirth issues. But their powers had a terrible catch. The more they used them, the closer they got to dying. Similar to Jane Foster, their powers were killing them, and they learned this the hard way. Gotham died because he pushed his powers too far, leaving Gotham Girl alone to fight for herself. Since Gotham Girl was more liked than Gotham, the writers made a good decision, and she eventually found Batman as a mentor who was teaching her how to fight crime without using her powers. That's an incredible story. A vigilante who has godlike powers but is unable to use them without potentially dying. That's more compelling than anything else on this list. It's wonderful and links Batman and Superman more than ever before.